damn thing. You haven't heard one word from the RNC on what they're doing to Trump or anybody else. Not a peep out of any of them. They do absolutely nothing. We got to change it, and we change it by getting rid of them. And how do we get rid of them? We get involved. Precinct chair, join your party in Minnesota, go to the convention, be a delegate. We're going to be there, and we're going to win. Next up, want to thank David Penn. Go to Target.com. Next up, American Sunrise.
A Renaissance man, whether he is running a state, hosting a talk show, or jamming on the guitar, this governor has always stood by his beliefs, no matter how controversial they are. He's MAGA, and he's here to weigh in on all things.
The case against Hunter Biden appears to be moving forward. Note I'm hedging a bit there. Ahead, we'll pull back the curtain on the secret empires in the American political class that hides corruption and enriches their families and their friends.
And Larry Elder wants to run for president, so why is the Republican Party trying to stop him? He's here with an update on his run for the White House.
Defeating the deep state, Kash Patel back to help expose who they are and what their nefarious goals really are.
And a private beach in New Jersey owned by devout Christians under siege to open on the Sabbath, breaking a 150-year-old tradition. Whose rights actually matter? Find out as American Sunrise starts right now.
We've got your back as you start your day.
You are
articulating what the majority of Americans feel today, and I really appreciate that you do.
Y'all tell the truth.
You guys are our voice.
We watch every morning while getting ready for work.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Gina, just fresh back from the Villages. We are here in the West Palm Beach studios. Good morning, Miranda.
Good morning. We had a blast. Good to see you. We now want to welcome in our good friend, David Brody in Washington, D.C. Good to see you.
Great to see you ladies back in the comfy studio after the Villages, which was a great show, full of energy. Look, what a show we've got today. I mean, Mike Huckabee, later Kristi Noem, Joe Kennedy, the coach from Washington State out there, the high school football coach. So much to get. Where's my liberal Jewish mother? That's the only person missing on this show. But Terrance Bates is not missing. He's in Denver with the headlines. Terrance, always a good morning to you.
Good morning, David. Good morning to those of you at home. And of course, as always, a special good morning to those of you in our Getter chat. The walls appear to be closing in around first son Hunter Biden, as special counsel David Weiss says that his office plans to seek a grand jury indictment against Hunter before the end of this month. The move appears genuine as it's part of a court filing from Wednesday related to felony criminal action against the first son over possession of a gun while using narcotics. The filing also addresses the misdemeanor tax case against Hunter that was brought earlier this year. New charges are expected to be filed in both cases, and prosecutors say they plan to seek an indictment by September 29th, which is one of the deadlines under the Speedy Trial Act. The push to keep President Trump out of the White House is ramping up, with Colorado being the latest state to try and keep him off the ballot. There's a new lawsuit this morning seeking to ban the 45th president from the primary ballot here in Colorado. The suit argues he is ineligible to run for president based on an obscure clause in the Constitution aimed at candidates who have supported a, quote, insurrection. The group, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, filed a legal action on Wednesday on behalf of 6 Republicans and unaffiliated Colorado voters. Ironically, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, whose call is at the center of the president's legal troubles in Georgia, is chiming in on the move, writing in the Wall Street Journal, quote, "For a Secretary of State to remove a candidate would only reinforce the grievances of those who see the system as rigged and corrupt." And President Trump isn't just fighting the courts and state attorneys general. He's also up against his very own vice president, Mike Pence, who is calling on Republican voters to reject Trump and fight for the future of conservatism and Republican Party. That was the long and short of Pence's campaign speech on Wednesday at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College. In remarks that seemed to forecast the end of times for the Republican Party, Pence likened President Trump to, quote, new populism, saying that the Republican Party we've long known will cease to exist and the fate of American freedom is in doubt. Coming up in less than 2 minutes, David Brody will take a deeper dive into that speech, and he'll let you hear some of it for yourself. That's a quick check of your headlines. Now let's get you back to Gina, Miranda, and the aforementioned David Brody.
Thanks, Terrance. Well, the best way, of course, to start any day is a Bible verse. And here is today's from Jesus Calling. It's John 15, verse 5. And it goes like this: I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me, you can do nothing. I find this so true. Whenever you are trying to figure out if a person is a good person or a bad person, look at the fruit. Fruit of their labor, fruit of their womb, all the fruits the Bible mentions. Love that verse.
And something that really has people fired up today, want to mention this, is the fact that Jill Biden has COVID and Joe is running around without a mask. Such hypocrisy. Check out the difference between what KGP said and what Biden did. Take a look.
As far as the steps he is taking, since the president was with the First Lady yesterday, he will be masking while indoors and around people.
Yeah. Didn't quite happen that way, did it, David?
No, not at all. And shockingly, we have hypocrisy coming from the White House. I know that's going to shock to all of America, ladies. And, I want to move on now, of course, to one of our big stories. Mike Pence is really laying down the hammer against Donald Trump in these presidential primaries. He did so in New Hampshire yesterday, talking about conservatism versus populism. Here's a little bit of that. Have a look.
When Donald Trump ran for president in 2016, he promised to govern as a conservative. And together we did. But it's important for Republicans to know that he and his imitators in this Republican primary make no such promise today. It seems like they forget that we succeeded because of a conservative agenda, not in spite of it. The truth is Donald Trump, along with his imitators, often sound like an echo of the progressives they seek to replace, and a choice for the American people.
Joining us now is a man who has been a standard bearer for conservatism and for decency, former Arkansas governor and current talk show host Mike Huckabee. He's never one to shy away from a debate or listen to the opposing side of any issue to look for some common ground. He represents the best of America, and he joins us now. Welcome, Governor. We are so glad to see you. First, curious your take on Mike Pence and his swipe at MAGA.
It was a little hard to watch because I'm trying to figure out exactly what is he talking about. He was part of the MAGA movement, the America First movement, as the candidate and then as the serving vice president under Donald Trump. You can't have it both ways. Either what Donald Trump did, putting America first, was the right thing for America, or it wasn't. Now, if Mike Pence disavows that agenda, the one that gave us energy independence for the first time in 75 years, a border under control, a rebuilding of NATO, respect by other nations of the world. I didn't say love. They didn't love Donald Trump, but they were afraid of him. They respected him. An economy that gave every American family over $4,000 in additional spending power every year. You take a look at all the things that were accomplished in a short 4 years. It was a remarkable run. Now, I want Mike Pence to come out and not just say, we don't like this populism. Tell us exactly what it is that you are now against that you once were for, because I'm not seeing it. And I don't see that Donald Trump has changed his philosophies or his ideas. And quite frankly, if Donald Trump and America First is populism, count me in. In fact, I was accused of being a populist in 2008 when I ran for the presidency, because I said I'm not just interested in the swells sitting up in their corner offices overlooking Manhattan who are oblivious to any economic downturn because their lifestyles aren't affected. I'm concerned about the guy standing on a concrete floor all day, sweating through his socks, coming home bone tired, the kind of guy who has to take his lunch with him to work, and the person who has to take a bath at the evening when he gets home from work rather than before he goes to work. There were a lot of people in the country who were hurting deeply, and it was because of the Republican elitism that, quite frankly, I hope we never go back to. I want no part of that, where there's a handful of globalists who look down their Ivy League educated noses at the working class people in the country and pretend that they just don't matter.
Well, and Governor, you were a trailblazer in this area. I mean, you were a populist before we're talking about populism today. I mean, you were doing that many, many years ago. Let me ask you a little bit. This whole thing about Mike Pence, it's really disconcerting to see. I mean, he was for all of Donald Trump's populist policies for the 4 years. And now he's basically saying, no, I didn't believe any of that. I am curious a little bit about Iowa, because he wants to be, mayor of Iowa. He wants to win Iowa. It doesn't look like he's going to do that. But when you won Iowa and when Rick Santorum won Iowa, Iowa's different today. I mean, Mike Pence, maybe 10 years ago, 14 years ago, could have won Iowa. Today, it's a whole different ballgame, Governor.
Well, it's a different ballgame. Frankly, it was very different in 2016 than it was in 2008 and 2012 for both me and for Rick Santorum. And I'll tell you what changed. a growing sense of frustration among working class voters. And one of the things that I thought was going to be an issue in 2016, I was one of those 17 candidates obliterated by Donald Trump that year. But I went into that race, as did several other current and former governors, saying, America is looking for solutions. They want people who have a pragmatic approach to political endeavors. They want someone who can say, look, here are the problems we face, and here are some very specific ways in which we can approach them and resolve them and fix them. Well, I was wrong. People weren't interested in fixing anything. That's why none of us who were governors, and I mean, there was Scott Walker, there was Rick Perry, there were Chris Christie was on the stage, Bobby Jindal, a host of governors, all of whom had really, I think, sterling records of accomplishments within their states. Here's what I found in Iowa. In 2016, nobody was interested in what I was going to do to fix anything. Their attitude was, we're so angry, we're tired of having the government squander our resources, confiscate our money that we've worked hard for, treat us like second-class citizens, and we're angry. And quite frankly, we're not interested in you going and oiling the machinery. We want someone who will go and burn the place down. I don't mean literally, because there will be some liberals whose heads will explode. Some are exploding this past weekend on my television show, which I'm having a hilarious fit over because they completely missed my point, but that's another story. Yeah. Here's what I want to say, David and Gina and Miranda, is that there's still this sense of great divide in this country, and it's not partisan. It's not so much Democrat versus Republican. It's the swells versus the middle of America, where people really do care about fashion values, and they're frustrated with a Washington and a political system that, frankly, just doesn't care.
Well, we've got a few more topics to get with you on. Hold that thought, because you've got many. We're back after the break with more with Mike Huckabee. Also, later on, affirmative action. Asian American Kenny Xu won his case against the far left, who he said were punishing thousands of hardworking students because they are the, quote, wrong race. Well, now the race he's entering is for Congress. He'll be with us. And never shy to voice or confront misjustice, radio talk show host and presidential candidate Larry Elder, ready to take on the Republican elite, shake up the party and our nation's politics. He's also ahead as American Sunrise continues.
Mike Huckabee jamming out on his guitar. Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Miranda Khan, and we want to continue now our conversation with the governor. Joining us once again, Governor Mike Huckabee. Good to see you. You are so good on that guitar.
So talented in every way.
In every way. Really is a Renaissance man.
I'd like to know what his non-talents are. Next question is yours, Miranda.
Welcome back, Governor. So I want to get... you go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
No, I'm just saying, look, your evaluation of my musical talents are greatly maybe overreached, and I appreciate it very much. I need an ego stroke. So thank you.
Well, we're tone deaf, and we can't even play one instrument, so we're very impressed. But yes, you are very talented nonetheless. So I want to get you, you were weighing in on Mike Pence. I'm just curious, out of everyone on that stage, everyone that's competing against Donald Trump, who do you think stands the best chance as far as being his VP, or do you think any of them could possibly be his VP?
Or do you think you could be his VP?
Ooh.
Oh, I like
Girl, you
that.
had to one-up me
that.
on that. You like how she just one-upped me on that? Did you see that? She just slipped that right in there.
Yeah. Hey, Gina, thank you, but it won't be me. I'm going to take that old position that if I'm nominated, I will not run, and if I'm elected, I will not serve. I've just, been there.
You heard it first.
Exactly. There's some talented people on that stage. There's some that I think that are sputtering, some that won't be there in another few months. Frankly, one of the people that has impressed me most has been Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he's got some policy honing up to do, particularly on Israel and the Middle East. That's somewhat troublesome, but I think he'll get there. Very smart guy, incredibly articulate. And one of the things I like about him is what I love about Donald Trump. He is not a wholly owned subsidiary of the donor class of Washington and the New York financial community. And that's one of the reasons that I endorsed Donald Trump when I got out of the race in 2016. People were shocked and surprised that I went with Trump. But I said, let me tell you something. We need somebody who is not totally bought by these donors. And that's what I look at. And I see a lot of the candidates and the donors are running it. And look at the ones who are saying, well, we were going to support DeSantis, but we're not sure. He's got to prove to us that he's going to do our bidding, and then we'll give him money. And I'm thinking that's exactly what's wrong in the political system in America. We got too many people who answer to the donors and not to the people and to the voters.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Well said.
Well, Governor Huckabee, America loves you, MAGA loves you, and this audience absolutely adores you as well. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy musical career to hang out with us this morning.
And TV career,
Yes.
Like we said, he has a lot.
It's a pleasure.
You.
Thank all of you. Have a great day. It's an honor to be with you.
Thanks, you. God bless.
Come back.
All right, who is surfing the web these days? Who's posting on Facebook? Who's checking out Instagram? And who is going viral on TikTok? You're not going to believe it. It's seniors. The big story behind this gray revolution, if you will. And later, Larry Elder, the renegade talk show host and presidential hopeful, ready to take on Republican establishment and shake things up a little bit in Washington, D.C. He's ahead as American Sunrise continues.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
Welcome back, everybody. Good morning to you, Miranda. I already missed the villages. I told my husband and my family.
You didn't want to leave.
I want to go back this weekend because it's not that far, just a few hours, and it's a nice drive. And Florida's fun to drive through. And I want to go back to City Fire Grill. I thought that was an amazing place to hang out.
Yeah, and everybody was so nice.
Yeah.
I mean, talking to just real average, everyday Americans that were so inspiring. They were so patriotic. It was great. And I really want to thank again Gina and Mike, the owners of City Fire, for having us out.
Hosts. Absolutely.
All right, it is time for a quick check of your headlines, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Good morning, fellow mature American citizens. So good to see you on this Thursday morning. Well, it turns out it's not just kids and young adults who are spending most of their time perusing social media on their phones. A new survey by One Poll in conjunction with Clear Match Medicare finds the average American who is at least 65 years old spends nearly 300 hours a year on social media, which is an average of about 47 minutes a day. Facebook is the favorite platform with about 75% using it. YouTube is a distant second, followed by Instagram. On a side note, the study also finds only 35% of seniors surveyed consider social media a reliable source for news. 60% believe social media is sometimes trustworthy and accurate, and more than a third say that they were either misinformed or outright scammed online in the past. Monday will mark the 22nd anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks that rocked this country and changed it forever. Leading up to the anniversary, President Biden is rejecting several plea deal conditions being sought by 5 Guantanamo Bay prisoners accused of being the principal architects of the attacks. Federal prosecutors are offering accused al-Qaeda leader Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and 4 co-defendants a plea agreement that would spare them the death penalty in return for admitting guilt in the deadly terror attacks. The group would then spend the rest of their lives behind bars. The conditions that President Biden is reportedly rejecting is that the group not serve their life sentences in solitary confinement, and that they be allowed to eat and pray with other inmates. Despite 2 very public moments that continue to raise questions about his health and mental acuity, Republican Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is staying put.
What do you say to those who are calling on you to step down? Do you have any plans to retire anytime soon?
I have no announcements to make on that subject.
What do you say to those who are
I'm going to finish my term as leader, and I'm going to finish my Senate term.
The Kentucky senator also downplaying the 2 recent incidents during which he froze up while speaking in public, offering no details about what caused those incidents. The 81-year-old is already the longest-serving party leader in U.S. Senate history. His current term as leader expires in January of 2025. McConnell's Senate term runs through January of 2027. That's a quick check of your headlines brought to you by AMAC. All right, David Brody, so what do you have teed up for us now, sir?
Well, T. Bates, I've got a few things teed up in the hopper, and let's begin with Kenny Hsu, who is running for Congress. He is a 26-year-old Republican activist who is taking on the federal government, who has gone all woke, and he knows a few things about woke, not because he's woke, but because he's fighting against wokeness, specifically against affirmative action at Harvard and other universities. And Kenny Hsu joins us now here on American Sunrise. Kenny, thanks for being here, and tell us a little bit about why you decided to get in the race.
Absolutely. So what we know is that the whole country has pretty much gone woke, from public universities to hospitals to our education system. But the incentives for that come from the federal government. The Department of Education authorized $122 billion under Joe Biden to give directly to schools to promote, quote unquote, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that money has largely gone into woke objectives. As your member of Congress in North Carolina, I will be the one to fight back against that administrative state and cut that kind of spending.
Let me get a little wonky for a second. You're going to run in North Carolina's 2nd Congressional District. It was there was redistricting in 2019. Since then, it's been a solid Democrat district. It's gone more urban. What's the game plan? How do you expect to win in what is now a pretty solid Democrat district? It wasn't before, but there's been some changes in the district.
Well, there's going to be changes again. They're going to redistrict again this year in October, and they are going to make it more Republican friendly. So don't worry about that. But if you go to my website, Kenny Shue for Congress, you can find out more about me and this run and how I expect to win.
Well, tell me a little bit about that. We'll go to the website, but what is the strategy? Is it more of an urban? It's a more of an urban district, but I'm curious as to what your message is, especially as it relates to things like critical race theory, because you have basically said you've been very critical of critical race theory, as has so many folks. But tell us a little bit about your concerns about critical race theory specifically.
Well, I actually have the track record of fighting critical race theory. So Harvard's admissions policies, which I successfully beat back at the SCOTUS level, discriminated against Asians to make room for lower qualified Black Americans. That's critical race theory. That says that Asians are privileged and Blacks are oppressed. That's not true. Everyone's an American. I also fought back against the Salvation Army when they tried to accuse their members of being racist. I said, they're the least racist people in the entire world. You should denounce critical race theory. And after a long, protracted battle, the national commander did. So I have experience fighting this ideology, and now I want to fight it in the highest offices of the land, in the federal government. You can trust me. I'm a conservative warrior. I've been out in this fight for the past 7 or 8 years.
You have said before regarding critical race theory that merit, in essence, what they're saying with critical race theory is that merit is racism. Expand on that a little bit.
So what we see today is that we do see a racial achievement gap, and I want to fix that racial achievement gap. It's plaguing our inner city schools. We have less than 7% of Baltimore kids proficient in math. But one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to get rid of merit. A lot of these people, they look at these statistics and they say, well, the test must be racist. That's why these kids aren't achieving. No, that's not true. We need to build up core skills. We can't say merit is white supremacist. That is the start to a culture of victimhood that I want to eradicate.
What do you make of what's going on writ large in the Republican Party right now as it relates to conservatism versus populism? Donald Trump came along. It's more of a populist party now. We have heard from Mike Pence yesterday in New Hampshire. He talked about how conservatism, traditional conservatism, needs to be the way forward, not populism. And I'm curious to see where you come down on that philosophical disagreement.
I think we need traditional conservatism to answer the cultural questions of our time. Look, guys, if you come from a two-parent family, you are so much less likely to be in poverty. You are so much less likely to do crime, 5 times less likely to do drugs. We need two-parent family structures in our country. We need to incentivize those. We need to bring those things. Another traditional conservative policy that I care about is merit-based immigration, right? We've been allowing so many people to come into this country who simply aren't qualified. And we should be prioritizing the people who have those structures, who have those skills in place so they can contribute to our country.
I've got 30 seconds, but you mentioned traditional conservatism. What about the populism aspect to this? Donald Trump brought along a populist attitude and policies, and it reshaped the Republican Party. What do you think of Donald Trump and populism? 30 seconds, Kenny.
Well, I'm like that, too, because I've actually taken on the big guys. I've taken on the billion-dollar institutions like the Salvation Army, UNC Medical School. I fought for merit-based treatment of doctors there. They were promoting unqualified doctors who happened to be Black. I want to fight for merit-based treatment. That's what most Americans agree on. That is populism, and you can find that at KennyShueForCongress.com.
Well, that is impressive to put in the plug at the end. That is a trained professional. Kenny Shue, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. When we come back, a lot more in American Sunrise, including, yes, we're going to talk about the C word, COVID. COVID's starting to spread, but are you sure that the COVID test gathering dust in your medicine chest will still work? We have your answer. And someone that never gathers dust. No, we're not talking about my career. We're talking about Larry Elder. He's here next as American Sunrise continues.
a look at your health, brought to us by our friends at the Wellness Company. Medical researchers now using smartwatches and fitness trackers to do rigorous, large-scale studies that would have been impossible in the past. Check this out. How your smartwatch could help unlock secrets of disease. It's a trend that may vastly expand our knowledge of an array of diseases. In a recent example, 100,000 female iPhone and smartwatch users signed up to share data about their menstrual cycles, about sleep and stress for an Apple Women's Health study. This data will provide critical information for learning more about conditions that range from heart disease to diabetes and even cancer. With a bigger, more diverse sample of participants, researchers may now be able to advance diagnoses and treatment for any condition linked to the data that participants share from their devices. Now, if they are going to track our every movement, then at least they're going to do one good thing with that data.
Right. I was kind of torn on that. I'm like, I don't know if I want everyone knowing that much about me, but then there are some benefits to it, right? Now, from smartwatches to being smart about what's being sitting on your shelf. As COVID cases surge again here in the U.S., you may be digging up that at-home test that you stashed, early on in the pandemic, and chances are they have an expiration date that may have passed. But
if they ever worked to begin with.
Right. There's a lot of question about that. But here's some good news. Again, the FDA issued guidance that approves 36 different tests as having later expiration dates than was actually printed on the packaging. So if you want to find out more, you can go to fda.gov to see the table of at-home COVID tests and check if yours has an extended expiration date. Again, depending on how much weight you put into these tests, but the FDA says an extension means, quote, the manufacturer provided data showing that the shelf life is longer than what was known when the test was first authorized. And scientists expect these tests will be able to detect the new variants that are popping up all around the country today.
I'm not believing any of this, just for the record.
I know. Well, I mean, you have to take everything right with a grain of salt. There's a lot of mistrust, and rightfully so. Yeah. So if you take a lot of weight into it, I'm 100% with you.
Yeah, I'm not buying into this. But I will say that I am always trying to convince my kids.
Because the president walks around without a mask and tells people to wear one?
Yeah. I am the mother that tries to tell my kids, oh, it's okay, honey, that the whatever says it's expired. You can still eat it. I am that mom. My kids are like, you'll put anything in a poblano pepper just so we'll eat it, even if it's expired. I'm like, yeah, guilty.
Is that the secret?
Guilty as charged. But here's something you can believe. If you want to be ready for anything that comes your way, you have to get the emergency kit from the Wellness Company. I love this idea. This kit has a wider range of medications for really just about any scenario, and they have a guidebook that helps you know what medication to give and when to give it so you don't have to be afraid of anything.
And they've even included ivermectin. Love that. And a Z-Pack. And these days, well, you must have those on hand. So go to twc.health/RAV today. Use that code RAV at checkout, and you're going to save yourself 10%.
Yeah.
All right. From the state of your COVID test to the state of the GOP radio talk show host, Larry Elder has made a serious bid to become one of the Republican candidates for the president, and the Republican Party seems to want to shut him down. I know you're all shocked about that. Yep.
Yeah, and Larry is never one, though, to shy away from a fight. He joins us now. Welcome. Larry, the National Republican Party hasn't been very welcoming to you. Tell us.
No, they sure haven't. I met all their criteria for that first debate. 40,000 individual donors, check. 200 had to come from 20 or more states, check. I had to submit 3 national polls where I was at 1% or better, check, check, check. Last minute, I get a phone call from Ronna McDaniel, the GOP chairwoman, and David Bossie, the debate czar, and they tell me I'm not qualified because one of the polls I submitted is, quote, affiliated with the Trump campaign, referring to the Rasmussen poll. I said, assuming that's true, why is that my problem? And they said any poll affiliated with any candidate cannot be used by any other candidate. By the way, Rasmussen put out a statement and said Trump is not affiliated with our poll, had nothing to do with our poll, and there's no reason why Elder can't use our poll. So then we submitted a 4th one where I was above 1%, and they said you submitted it too late, which I did because I didn't know I needed to submit another one. But by the way, the polling of that poll had concluded before the debate deadline. So as far as I'm concerned, I complied with the spirit of the rule, if not the letter of the rule. They clearly could have let me in if they wanted to. Not only did they not let me debate, They put a sign at the door saying if Elder shows up or if his campaign shows up, don't let him in. So now I've made the RNC terror watch list. But rather than complain about it, we filed a complaint with the FEC. And my goal now is to make sure that I make the next debate in California on the 27th of September. To that end, I've got to get 3% in 3 different polls and donations from 50,000 individuals. As for the latter, I don't think I'm going to have any difficulty doing that. As for the former, I'm making a massive media buy starting the next couple of days to get my numbers up to 3%. And if I make that debate stage, it'll be the biggest comeback since George Foreman.
Yeah, and you don't have a grill. Listen, Larry, but you do have a lot of great policies. You have a lot of great policies that Americans aren't hearing on that debate stage. So the logical follow-up is, why do you believe the RNC did not want you on that debate stage? Because you did qualify. You talk about spirit and letter of the law, but the truth of the matter is they could have put you on that debate stage. Why did they not? What is your answer to that?
In my opinion, I make them feel uncomfortable about issues they don't want to talk about. For example, the epidemic of fatherlessness. It is particularly acute in the black community, where 70% of black kids now enter the world without a father in the home, married to the mother, up from 25% back in 1965. And the numbers are clear. As the young candidate for Congress pointed out, you're far more likely to be poor, to drop out and commit crime if you don't have a dad in the house. The other thing I think I make them feel uncomfortable about is refuting this lie the Democrats and the media have been pushing and pushing and pushing, that America remains systemically racist. Joe Biden gave a speech at Howard University and said the number one threat to the homeland was white supremacy. And a few days ago, as you know, a white racist murdered 3 black people. And Biden, of course, made a comment about that, but didn't say a darn thing when about 2 or 3 months ago, a black man pulled out a gun, walked up to a white man in Tulsa, Oklahoma, killed him execution style, walked up to another white guy, shot him in the back of the head, killed him execution style, and admitted he did it because they were white. Biden didn't say a word because it doesn't advance his agenda that black people should be fearing white racists. It's nonsense. It's what they do in order to get black people angry about social justice and about equity, whatever that means, and to pull that lever blindly for the Democratic Party. I talk about stuff like that, and I think it makes them feel uncomfortable. For example, most homicide is same-race homicide. Most white people who are killed by other white people. Most black people who are killed by other black people. But every year, there are around 750 black-white homicides. 500 white people are killed by blacks, even though blacks are just 13% of the population. 250 whites killed by blacks. 250 blacks killed by whites, rather, even though they're 60% of the population. My point is, if a white person said the number one threat to the homeland is black supremacy, he would be properly called a racist, because these are individuals committing the crime, not a race committing a crime. But Biden does it and gets away with it. I say stuff like this, and I think it makes the GOP establishment feel very, very uncomfortable.
Speaking of going after the GOP establishment, it is to our understanding that you have a new campaign ad that's coming out this week, kind of a grassroots effort where you're hoping to actually go after the RNC. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, that's right. As I mentioned, I filed a complaint with the RNC, with the Federal Election Commission. My lawyer is the former chair of the FEC, and he says by failing to apply the debate criteria fairly to Elder, what the RNC did, in effect, was to give an in-kind contribution to the 8 people who appeared there, and that could subject the RNC to a fine as much as $100 million. But my goal really is to let people know who I am, what I am, that my father never knew his biological father. I left home at the age of 13, Athens, Georgia, Jim Crow South, at the beginning of the Great Depression. Cleaned toilets for a living, started a little cafe in his late 40s. When my dad retired, he owned that cafe, the property next door to it, plus the home that's still in our family right now. Not too shabby for a young black man with no real background. And it shows you what can happen in America. And I'm talking about the epidemic of fatherlessness, the lie that America remains systemically racist, and the absolute need for school choice. Your candidate earlier mentioned Baltimore. There are 13 public high schools in Baltimore, I kid you not, where 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. So I'm asking people to go to my website, excuse me, it's early, LarryElder.com, throw something in the tip jar, and get me up there in that debate stage on the 27th of September. You're my first interview this morning. Takes a while to get my voice revved up.
Totally understand it. We get up early too, and it's really early where you are because, I used to live in California just like you, and I remember getting up for those early morning hits, and it was the middle of the night for me.
Right.
So I totally get it. One of the questions I think a lot of our audience in particular, just reading through the chat, has for you is, your thoughts on Donald Trump. Why would you choose to run against a president who many feel has sacrificed literally life and limb to continue to run as the tip of the spear for the MAGA movement? And so why would you choose then to do anything to diminish that? Why not just get behind and be part of that effort, be on his cabinet and run in 28?
Well, I don't consider myself to be running against Donald Trump or any of the Republicans. I'm running against the Biden-Harris administration. They're the threat. Open borders are the threat. Inflation is a threat. Gasoline
we
prices.
agree with you on that. We agree with you on that, Larry. But my question is, why not just get behind him, be an important part of his team, unified against exactly what you're saying, the Biden-Harris threat, the Biden-Harris radicalism regime? Why not just do that for purposes of almost team building, right? Like just be with the team that we have and then run in 28. Why not just do that?
Because I want to make sure that whoever the nominee is, he or she talks about some of the issues I'm talking about that we're not talking about. As I said earlier, the epidemic of fatherlessness. That is the #1 domestic problem facing this country, and nobody's talking about it. Our side does not talk about it for fear that if you're white, you're going to be called systemically racist. If you're black, you're going to be called, as I was called by the LA Times, the black face of white supremacy. And the left doesn't talk about it because they created the problem. So
Larry, let me ask you something, because we only have about a minute remaining, and I want to go back to what Gina's point is. Just real quickly, though, out of all the candidates, I think going back to what Gina's saying, why should real Americans that are watching American Sunrise right now vote for you instead of President Trump? Because
I want to make sure,
let's be honest, competing.
I want to make sure whoever the front runner is talks about some of these issues we're not talking about. Specifically, we need an amendment to the Constitution to fix spending to a certain percentage of the GDP. Otherwise, government is going to get bigger and bigger, whether a Republican is president or a Democrat is president. I've got a handful of issues nobody's talking about. If I can get the front runner, whoever the nominee is, to talk about these kinds of things, I will have done a service to my party, and more importantly, I feel I've done a service to my country, and that is why I'm running. LarryElder.com.
Larry, good to see you.
Nice.
It's been a while. Thank you so much for joining us on American Sunrise. Looking forward to seeing that new ad and look forward to talking to you in the future. All right. Stay awake, not woke. Also, real quickly, though, what did you think about that response? We'd love to know what our viewers think.
They'll tell us.
They'll tell us. They will. They will not hold back. All right. Stay awake, not woke. Coming up, Disney World is starting to feel the effects of its woke agenda, and it's affecting more their bottom line.
And later, Coach Joe Kennedy won a victory at the Supreme Court to pray on the field before he plays. So why has the coach decided to walk away from the field just days after taking a knee? Well, he'll be here later to tell us.
coffee. You know what that means. It's time for Stay Awake, Not Woke, again, sponsored by our good friends at Beer Vet Coffee, beervet.com. Use that promo code RAV for 10%. Some of the best coffee around.
Yeah, absolutely. Our Stay Awake, Not Woke story today is this. As companies make woke marketing moves and lose conservative consumers, other business owners have found opportunities to appeal to the anti-woke crowd. Look at this headline. Conservative brands including beer, chocolate, razors, and more are trying to profit on anti-woke backlash. Now, some of the anti-woke products that you can find out there, Conservative Dad's Ultra Right beer, right? Jeremy's chocolates. I'll take just about any chocolates. Jeremy's razors. American Beauty Cosmetics, 7 Weeks Coffee, V-Score shopping tool. There are a ton of them. I particularly love Culture of Life clothing company. It's a pro-life clothing company. They're part of their proceeds go back to pro-life causes. I love that.
Well, Conservative Dad's Ultra Right beer, like the name, launched in April in response to, of course, Bud Light's marketing controversy or major blunder with Dylan Mulvaney, and it's now hitting shelves in stores and restaurants all across the South. Jeremy's Chocolates launched after Hershey's included a trans woman in an International Women's Day campaign, and it sold 500,000 bars within days of its launch. Gina ate most of them.
Yes.
she ate most of them. Other new products include cosmetics, which David Brody's a big fan of, razors.
That's true. That's
which
true.
is all about Terrance. You know, he loves it, and coffee. So these basically these woke busting shopping tools that help you identify brands and political values. These are great ones. Some of these companies have even pledged to fight wokeness with its profits. Ultra Right Beer announced that it will donate a percentage to the 1776 Project, and that is a political action committee that, quote, unseats woke school board members all across the country. So I was, of course, joking around a little bit, but, you know, Gina, you already mentioned some the products, the clothing wear, which I wasn't familiar with that. So that's really cool. I got to ask you, has this changed, you know, the way you buy? Terrance, let's start with you. I mean, I joked around about the razors because you always have a clean shave. But has this changed for you? Like, do you sit there and go consciously think about, okay, maybe I don't want to support this business?
You know what? I will say for me, I'm a little shallow in that respect. I'm not necessarily looking at whether I'm going to support a specific business for its political stance or not. It's all about bottom line for me. It's all about price typically. And as you guys know, I'm not cheap, I'm frugal. And so I typically go with what is most cost effective. But having said that, I do think it is important for businesses to focus on the business, to focus on the service that they're offering as opposed to whatever political agenda they're trying to push. Stay in your lane.
Yeah, you know,
it's probably,
Terrance, we hear.
Go ahead, David.
Well, I was going to say we hear a lot about a civil war in terms of ideological civil war and a philosophical civil war, geographical civil war. This is a consumer civil war, if you think about it. I mean, you know, back when I was growing up, back in Reconstruction times or however long I've been around, I mean, this was not around. We didn't have these choices to make. I mean, it was you know, you just went and bought a product. Nowadays, you have to really be a smart consumer, and this is what it's about. You have to kind of decide what you're going to spend your money on because the money is being spent on woke causes. And by the way, let me just quickly say, in terms of makeup, Miranda Khan, it is not fake news what you just said. I love makeup. I am looking at the MAC. Hang on, real quick. I'm sorry, I got to put on my glasses. The MAC Studio Fix.
Stop.
Oh, that is so woke, David. David, you just destroyed your whole argument.
Wait, so you're telling me I shouldn't? I have to get rid of this?
I'm just telling you that Mac is woke.
Okay, fine.
Mac is woke.
I'll look for another one.
Well,
it's impossible to be perfect on this topic.
I'm just going to put it out there. I wake up.
You know, and you're so gorgeous. The hairstyle in particular is on point every day with you, Terrance. I have such envy of that. Miranda probably does too. We spend a lot of time trying to get our hair right. But I will say for patriots out there, for MAGA patriots, I think this is one of the biggest stressor of our day to day. Like for me, to try to find that not woke product, to find a product I like and then see, oh, it's made in China is so upsetting to me. And I'm not perfect. You can't be perfect, right? But I am so thankful on a positive note, because I always like to end these things on a positive note, that there is a parallel consumer availability out there now, that we do have these. We didn't used to have options. Clothing especially is really difficult.
Right.
All right, guys out there,
like,
you keep up the conversation. Sorry, guys, we're coming up against the break, so keep up the conversation in our Getter Chat, because ahead in our next hour, further exposing the deep state and the government gangsters that run it. Kash Patel, he'll be here live. And next in our Moment of Faith, find out why Christians in a private New Jersey beach town are having a really hard time keeping their bit of God's Square Mile closed on Sunday mornings. Their story as American Sunrise continues.
Hope your morning's off to a good start. You're about 3 minutes until the top of the hour. Time now for our Moment of Faith and those trying to keep their cool down at the Jersey Shore. So Ocean Grove, New Jersey is probably unlike any other beach along the Jersey Shore. So the privately owned seaside town known as God's Square Mile has kept its beach closed on Sunday mornings up until about noon so its residents can attend church and engage in worship. So residents even have a pier there. You can see it right in front of your screen. So if you're trying to do something else, you'll want to stop and take a look, because this is something like you won't see really anywhere else.
Wow.
But it's shaped like a cross. Isn't that beautiful how the light hits it?
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
I did not know about this. What a nice surprise.
Isn't it cool? So the area of Ocean Grove was founded on Christian values, and it's a practice that has been in place, believe it or not, for 150 years. So now some residents say the practice, however, needs to end, and the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection has put Ocean Grove on warning, saying the town is disobeying the law by cutting off access to the ocean and wet sand, which it argues is public property. Labor Day weekend, things got a little heated between those who want to be on the beach and those who think that they need to wait until noon. So a lot of debate here. Would love to get David Brody's reaction to this, because David, you used to live in Jersey. So what are your thoughts on this? I know you attend church regularly on Sundays as Gina watches church service. I attend church. I'm kind of torn on this. Here's a good thing. It's not Chris Christie on the beach. I will say that's keeping people from going to the beach. Trying to look at the positive side of this.
We don't need a Christie visual. We don't need a Biden visual on the beach. Look, I think ultimately what this is all about when it comes to church and Jesus and all of that, God looks at the heart. Right. It's not about the rituals. It's not about the time. It's not about being in a building. It's about your relationship with Christ. And I think that's what matters. Whether you're going to be on a beach before noon or afternoon or in New Jersey or New Mexico or California. Yes, I said California. Yeah. I don't think it matters. Yeah. I think ultimately this is a relationship, a personal one between you and your maker. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Well said.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Absolutely. Up to the city, though, I think. There's plenty more ahead on American Sunrise coming up. Hunter and Joe Biden chronicles, they continue. The latest information on the father and son team who are at the center of the coming storm.
And life within the swamp. Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy is tiptoeing through not only the swamp, but a political minefield as he weighs whether to open an official impeachment inquiry into President Biden. The latest details as American Sunrise continues.
Ahead on this second hour of American Sunrise, federal prosecutors say they are ready to take another shot at indicting Hunter Biden. The big question this morning, what will be different this time around after family influence appeared to weigh heavily in the first son's unprecedented sweetheart deal on a felony gun charge the first time?
Defeating the deep state, Kash Patel back to help expose who they are and what their nefarious goals really are.
And Coach Joe Kennedy won a victory in the Supreme Court to pray on the field before he plays. So why has the coach decided to walk away from the field just days after taking a knee? He's going to be here to tell us.
We've got your back as you start your day.
Articulating what the majority of Americans feel today, and I really appreciate that you do.
Y'all tell the truth.
You guys are our voice.
We watch every morning while getting ready for work.
It is hour 2 of American Sunrise. Let's check in with the one, the only David Brody. David, did the D.C. swamp swallow you up yet?
Oh, it swallows me up every day, but I survive. I'm a survivor. Let me sing Gloria Gaynor right now. I will survive. No, that's kind of weird. We're looking forward to talking to Governor. We're looking forward to talking to Governor Kristi Noem here in just a moment, mere moments. But first, Terrance Bates with the headlines in Denver. Terrance, always good to see you. I don't want to bury the lead. You are the lead, Terrance.
Well, thank you, David. I just have to say, you singing Gloria Gaynor, no less weird than you showing off your MAC makeup. I'm just gonna put that out there on the table. Just gonna put it. Dr. Gina, you agree with me, right? I see the you. Just saying, David. I love you, my friend.
You're not going to get any arguments from me.
It was a little uncomfortable. Let me put it that way.
That was weird. That was weird.
Let's get to this morning's top stories. It appears first son Hunter Biden will have to answer to a felony gun charge that typically lands defendants in jail. However, the younger Biden's attorney argues that a previously signed plea agreement that amounts to less than a slap on the wrist for that charge, quote, remains valid and prevents any additional charges from being filed against Mr. Biden, who has been abiding by the conditions of release under that agreement for the last several weeks, including regular visits to the probation's office. That's a direct quote from the lawyer. All of this lawyering in the court of public opinion comes after special counsel David Weiss filed court documents on Wednesday saying that he plans to seek new indictments against the first son before the end of this month. The case once involved Hunter's alleged possession of gun while using narcotics. The second case addresses the misdemeanor tax case against the president's son. Trump-endorsed Arizona gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake has tens of thousands of reasons to say, "I told you so" this morning. It's all thanks to an Arizona judge's ruling on Wednesday deeming that the state's common practice of validating ballot signatures is illegal. In short, Republican Yavapai County Superior Court Judge John Napper says that election officials have to compare signatures on election envelopes with the voter's actual voter registration record or subsequent party affiliation change documents. Those are the only documents that should be used for signature verification, he says. Lake and others say that didn't happen during last November's election. Big picture here, the move only stops efforts by Arizona Secretary of State Adrian Fontes to have lawsuits challenging the state's election signature verification thrown out of court. And finally, a Georgia judge says that he is very skeptical that Donald Trump and his 18 co-defendants could stand trial together as soon as next month. Prosecutors now have 10 days to explain how they can keep the defendants together while simultaneously sifting through the mountain of outstanding legal questions. The Fulton County District Attorney's Office is trying to get the racketeering trial underway as soon as October 23rd. President Trump's lawyers are asking that the case against him be separated from the other co-defendants, saying, quote, there can't be a trial of 19 people. Prosecutors say they plan to call more than 150 witnesses over at least 4 months of trial. That's a quick check of your headlines. Now, let's get back to David and Dr. G.
All right, thanks, Terrance. President Donald Trump will be attending a sold-out rally, by the way, in Rapid City, South Dakota on Friday. This event is billed as a fundraiser for the state Republican Party, though the event could signal much more. Republican Governor Kristi Noem is scheduled to speak at that event. Governor Noem has remained loyal to Trump, and some see this second-term Republican governor as Trump's potential next running mate. But will she be?
Well, and Governor Noem is going to have a few possible answers to that. She joins us now live here on American Sunrise. Governor Noem, always great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's wonderful to be with both of you. This is exciting. Congratulations on the show.
Well,
Thank
I appreciate
you so much.
it, Governor Noem.
Happy to have you.
Let me ask you a little bit first about this. The VP circulation, it's spreading. Now, if he came with his plane and his wonderful hair, and he sits down and he talks to you, I mean, you're going to listen, are you not?
Of course I am. I think everybody should absolutely listen. This man has sacrificed incredibly for our country. He's stepped up and led during very difficult and challenging times. And I think that's what sets him apart in this presidential race is people don't have to try to figure out what kind of a leader he might be. We've lived under the benefits of the decisions that he made. What I love so much about President Trump's service while he was in the White House was he let me do my job. during the pandemic, during different crises that came. We saw riots and violence in other states. He let me do my job as governor to make the best decisions for my people. I know for a fact that if Joe Biden had been in the White House during that time, he would not have, because even today with him in the White House, I fight every day to protect our way of life here in South Dakota. So that's one of the things that I think Americans are excited about, and what's resonating with them in their support of President Trump is that they know that he respects them, he respects their personal responsibility and their decision making, and he knows what his job is.
You were preceded today on this program by Governor Huckabee, another very popular governor who's been very MAGA, very loyal to President Trump. We asked him the question, if he were asked, would he accept President Trump's invitation to join him on the ticket as vice president? He said a flat no. He said it in a very, very polite way, but it was very clear that he is not in the running for that, and that is not his desire for his future. So I'm going to ask you that same question, Governor. Many are speculating that you might be on the short list of those that President Trump might approach for vice president. What would your answer be?
Well, he and his team have not asked, so I think that's always a good thing to clarify. We haven't even had that conversation. So there are many people that are out there being talked about and speculated about, but I think every single American, if they're asked to do something, they need to consider it, that they need to look at what they can do to play a part in saving this country. For me, every day I get up and I try to live a life of significance. I don't like to miss opportunities to do what I can for other people. So that'll be a part of the conversation and the consideration at that time. But they have not asked, and so therefore that talk hasn't happened.
Governor Noem, Donald Trump is coming to South Dakota Friday night. You'll be there. You haven't endorsed him yet. Might there be a potential endorsement on the horizon here?
Well, you'll have to come, David, and see if there will be. Okay. We have thousands and thousands of people that immediately bought tickets to come to this Republican fundraiser to see President Trump in South Dakota. What I love about it, too, is that he came. It's not that we didn't invite other people to come as well. They all were too busy, had other priorities. Maybe we're going to spend their time in Iowa or New Hampshire. That's not what President Trump said. He said, if you want me, I'll be there. And that's what's important, is every single person matters to him. Every state matters. Other candidates said, why would I spend time in South Dakota right now? Because there's Americans here. There's people here who are dealing with the consequences of this Democrat in the White House, and they want to be inspired by someone who will fight for them.
Governor Noem, I want you to know that we will have boots on the ground at that event.
Good.
Rav will be there with bells on, and we're honored to be there, and we would not miss such an event. So I want you to know we will absolutely be there for whatever we're going to learn there. Absolutely. David, I'm sorry, I totally interrupted because I know you had another question.
Well, just a quick question about the jobs out there in South Dakota, in the heartland. You have had this wonderful campaign, and it's funny and it's unique, and we just want to play a quick clip of it and get your reaction on the other side. Here it is.
Let's look on the bright side. South Dakota stayed open for business during the pandemic. Now we've got more jobs than people. So I'm filling in until you get here. South Dakota is the freest state in America and the best state to live, work, and raise a family. We accept most out-of-state professional licenses, and we have over 20,000 open jobs, including for electricians.
South Dakota, freedom works here.
Oh, no, I'm a lousy electrician.
All right, so just confirming the breaking news here, Kristi Noem is not an electrician, America.
No, we have proven in this marketing campaign I'm not a good electrician, plumber, welder. All challenging for me. The last commercial we're putting out here talks about the need that we have for people to come in and fill our empty jobs. We've had thousands and thousands of people, because of this marketing campaign, pick up their families and move to our state. And that's going to allow me to get back to my real job.
Governor,
sure.
Joe Biden is pushing masks again. I'm sure you've heard, even though he isn't practicing what he's preaching. You and your state did not comply the first time around. I'm assuming you probably won't be complying this time either. Is that correct?
No, it's clear, and there's hundreds of studies out there that show masks aren't effective, and that the best thing you can do to stop the spread of the COVID virus is to wash your hands. So that is one of the things that we have talked about a lot, is the stupidity of what the White House is doing and pushing, and what some of these folks are doing by going back to former policies that simply didn't work and didn't make any sense and took away people's freedoms. That's what I was shocked by during the COVID pandemic, is that they used fear to control people. And you can see now it's coming around to doing the exact same thing. And people should really recognize that they need a leader who will protect their personal rights to make the best decisions for them and their families.
Governor Kristi Noem, great to have you on the show. It's great to see you. It's been a little while, so we hope you'll come back. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Enjoy your day.
All right. Thanks again. And that's what they do in South Dakota. See, that's how they end the interviews. Enjoy your day. We don't say that in the swamp. And in New York, we say, get on, move on. All right. When we come back, let's talk about the swamp, shall we? Specifically, Kevin McCarthy. It looks like he is dealing with some quicksand in the nasty D.C. bog. Find out why as American Sunrise continues in a moment.
Jingle, Miranda. I just love that. This segment is sponsored by Sea of Mud, seaofmud.com. Use promo code RAV1776 for your 15% off. That's substantial. They are a rural, American, patriotic apparel company you can feel good about buying from. Everything is American made. They have much more than t-shirts also. Knives, drinkware, swimwear, jewelry. Miranda and I were laughing when Terrance did this read yesterday and was saying about the swimwear.
Like
we were wondering if Terrance was going to... We definitely want to see
Terrance in a swimsuit.
Buys one of those swimsuits.
Oh, I was like, I thought you were going to say you want to see Terrance in a swimsuit. Well, he's going to be joining us here in Florida, so looking forward to that.
That's a good place to. That's a good place to get someone in a swimsuit. No one comes to Florida and doesn't get in a swimsuit before the.
He's over there nodding his head. No way. So he's like, nope, not going to happen. Not going to happen. Oh, come on, Terrance.
You know what? I'm that guy. I'm the guy who will go to the beach in a full suit. I'm definitely not doing a swimsuit. I am that guy. I'm just going to be honest with you.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, Gina is very persuasive. I'm just saying. So let's talk about who is lurking around the swamp today, because it looks like Republican Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy may be the one. McCarthy is, tiptoeing through a political minefield as he weighs whether to open an official impeachment inquiry into President Biden. Here's the headline. McCarthy faces political minefield on Biden impeachment. Voters in the GOP base are exerting pressure to pursue impeachment without long inquiry, including his good friend, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who said it right here on the show multiple times. Yeah. Trump pressuring, who McCarthy has kept a good relationship with so far, but moderate members of his conference question whether or not there's enough evidence to actually launch an inquiry. Why? I don't know. And there's a chance that any impeachment effort could backfire politically, although none of us are thinking that. Still, McCarthy says...
I don't see how. I think that's
I just don't. I do too. But he says it's, quote, a natural step forward following the stream of information. All right, enough of those NBC headlines. I just want to get right to it, because we've talked about it over and over again. I don't see what we're waiting for at all when it comes to this. I mean, I know that, you had Marjorie Taylor Greene said that she'd been pushing. She introduced those articles of impeachment right away. She supported Kevin McCarthy, and she is saying, look, I'm gonna hold back. I'm gonna use the power of the purse to make sure that something actually happens. Right. David?
Well, here's what Kevin McCarthy is waiting for. He doesn't have the votes. He doesn't have the votes,
But
Miranda.
Why doesn't he have the votes? He's supposed to be the unifier of his party.
No, but yeah, true. But here's why. Because with the slim majority he has in the House, he's got all the Democrats are going to vote against this. And here come the moderate Republicans. He's got at least 10, 15, 20 moderate Republicans that you're right. I mean, he hasn't been able to unify. He can't get them on board, and he probably is not going to get them on board. So, well, he may, but that's the problem. It's those 15 to 20 moderates or so. It might be 10, might be 20. The point is that that's the problem. That's why this isn't going anywhere right now. And he's not going to bring anything to the House floor until he's got the votes.
But David, going to your point real quickly, and Terrance, you can react to this too. You refer to them as moderate Republicans. Can we just call them out for what they really are? I would say rhino Republicans, Terrance.
Sure. No, I hear you, and David, you make a great point, and it is the reason that I suspect we have not seen an actual inquiry. But to me, the bigger question is the idea that there needs to be an inquiry, that there needs to be new evidence that comes. We've seen volumes of evidence from various, not just one congressional committee, but various congressional committees. The evidence is there. So at this point, it seems like you need to either poop or get off the pot when you're Kevin McCarthy. Get it done.
See,
and if you don't think you have the votes, I'm sorry, let me just finish this one last point.
Yeah, sorry.
If you don't have the votes, how about this? Get the votes. Tell anybody who might be an outlier, look, let's just get this thing into the Senate. Let's just get this thing into the Senate, and then let the evidence speak for itself. Let the American people, if you will, or let those in the Senate decide the actual evidence. At least get it out there. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dr.
Right, and here's why this argument of not having the votes doesn't hold any water with me, because I've seen before where you bring something to the floor, and guess what? Public opinion comes down heavy on the heads of those so-called moderate rhinos who are not willing to vote there. Let's do the thing, right? And let the chips fall where they may. Let this audience have a time at them, have a chance at these folks who are saying, oh, we're not going to vote for it. For an inquiry against the Democrat who there is mounds of evidence against? No. Hey. I want this audience to have a chance at those people, and the only way you get that is if McCarthy sprouts the backbone and makes the inquiry.
10 seconds. You don't have to convince me of that. I agree, and I think that is the way to go. Put it on the floor. Even if it's voted down, put pressure on those rhinos to do something. I agree.
Yeah, I want all the names. I want a big graphic so this audience can see it.
Yes.
All right, up next, we're taking a deep dive into secret empires and the Biden crime family.
Imagine that.
Yeah, right back.
Welcome back to American Sunrise, 25 minutes past the top of the hour. There are a number of news items making economic headlines this morning. For instance, China took a big bite out of Apple stock on Tuesday, sending the tech giant on a nearly 3% tumble. The stock price decline came after a report surfaced saying that China has banned officials at central government agencies from using iPhones and other foreign-branded devices at work. And David, China's reported move comes just months after the U.S. federal government, along with many state and local governments, banned use of Chinese social media app TikTok from government devices over concerns that the Chinese were using those apps to spy on Americans. So this is a story, David, that we'll continue to watch and see how it all plays out.
Yeah, for sure. TikTok, spying, the Chinese. The Chinese makes me think of Joe Biden. Joe Biden makes me think of crime and, of course, sleeping as well. But let's talk more about Joe Biden and the, quote, crime family. Do we even need to put a quote around that? Air quotes? I don't think so. Our next guest knows all about Biden. He's written books about it. Matter of fact, he wrote a book called Secret Empire. Secret Empires. It's plural. All about the Biden crime family. Look at that. It's like seen out of Jersey Shore. It's like mafia stuff. Jimmy Hoffa on that cover, I think. No, that's Biden. Sorry. Anyhow, joining me now, Peter Schweitzer. Peter, thanks for being here. I appreciate you.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, look, we've talked before. There's so much to get to with Biden. Let me start with the 30,000-foot view question, which is the aerial view. Where is this going? We just talked in the last segment about Kevin McCarthy maybe not having the votes for an impeachment inquiry right now, but he needs to get there somehow. Do you think Republicans are going to have the backbone and the spine to at least start this impeachment inquiry?
Well, I think certainly based on the evidence, they should. Look, we have all elements in this story now of bribery, whether it's Ukraine or China. The fact is the Biden family received millions of dollars, tens of millions from China, about 10 million from Ukraine. They provided no discernible business service in return. That money was circulated throughout the Biden family. And the thing everybody has to remember crystal clear is, bribery statutes don't require that the politician themselves get paid. According to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the international bribery standards, which the Obama-Biden administration signed in 2011, if a family member gets paid for favorable government policy, that is the same as if the politician themselves gets paid. And that seems to be the pattern that emerges when you're talking about Joe Biden and his family.
Okay, so let's talk about this in two separate entities here. We've got Hunter Biden, David Weiss, the special counsel. There's a sense that a grand jury indictment may be coming. What's your view on that first before we get to the big guy, Joe Biden?
Yeah, I think, look, David Weiss has been at this since 2018. That grand jury was convened about 5 months after my book came out. And he clearly has not been interested in pursuing this case. I think he sees it detrimental to his legal future. We know that members of his office tipped off the Bidens when they were investigating. He's let statute of limitations lapse. I don't have a lot of confidence in David Weiss. They're apparently going to charge Hunter Biden on this gun charge. Well, good for them. But as far as I'm concerned, that's the moving violation. What they really need to be focused on is the bank robbery, which is the actual bribery involving the family itself. So I don't have a lot of confidence in David Weiss or in this independent counsel going forward.
Peter, I've got 30 seconds. I've got to ask you about the big guy, Joe Biden. A lot of smoke. Where's the direct correlation to Biden in terms of him getting a payment? Is that what we're looking for here? 30 seconds.
Well, again, we don't need to have a payment to Joe Biden, but I do think we're going to see the flow of funds with Joe Biden. There are more bank records that are being subpoenaed. We know for a fact, based on the testimony of the business partner, that Hunter Biden called his father to get the Ukrainian prosecutor fired. That's what Burisma wanted. Burisma was paying him. We have Joe Biden bragging about the fact that he fired it. You have payment. You have favor done in return. That meets the classic definition of bribery.
Now, Peter Schweitzer, great to have you on the show with the Government Accountability Institute. Thanks so much. We want to have you back very soon. Now to Terrance Bates with the Economic Headline, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Well, you can see the clapping, and the bell is going to ring here momentarily. The bell will be tolling, and then the markets will officially be open. I'm actually pulling up my app now to see how the markets are faring. I can tell you that in pre-market action, things were looking pretty good. Let's see if it continues that way right now. There we have it. The bell has tolled, and the markets are now officially open. And it looks like markets are starting on a negative turn, all of them in the red. The Dow, the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, all down just a little bit. Hopefully that will change throughout the days. We'll, of course, keep you updated on that. In the meantime, there is lots of speculation these days about whether the Federal Reserve will raise interest rate at its next meeting later this month and again before the end of the year. A new report from the central bank on a cooling labor market and slowing inflation in both July and August is now raising expectations that the Fed is either done with or close to ending interest rate increases. While Fed officials are publicly saying that they are keeping their options open, the central bank is widely expected to leave its benchmark rate at the current 5.25 to 5.50 range. However, policymakers are leaving the door open for a final quarter percentage point hike before the end of this year. Vladimir Putin called the U.S. dollar's drop in dominance objective and irreversible. He made that statement during the recent BRICS summit in South Africa as Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa formally agreed to use local currencies instead of the U.S. dollar. As demand for the dollar weakens, the buying power of the dollar also weakens, and that is why Birch Gold Group is busier than ever these days. Investors and savers are looking to harness the power of physical gold held in a tax-sheltered IRA. You can text the word America to the number 989898 for your free information kit on gold. With thousands of satisfied customers, an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, and countless 5-star reviews, you can count on the Birch Gold Group to help you navigate transitioning an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. As the U.S. dollar continues to receive pressure from foreign countries, along with digital currency and central banks, arm yourself with information on how to protect your savings. You can do so, again, simply by texting the word America to the number 989898 and claiming your free information kit on gold from the Birch Gold Group. Winning a war, but at what cost? After returning to the field last week following a years-long legal fight all the way to the Supreme Court, there is breaking news this morning involving football coach Joe Kennedy. The coach joins us live when American Sunrise continues.
Barbecue. Red State Barbecue.
I love this song. Welcome back to American Sunrise. Of course, this segment is sponsored by our good friends over at Red State Barbecue. RedStateBarbecue.com is the place to go. Use that promo code RAV10 for 10% off.
Okay, last night, one of my favorite recipes my mom taught me. I love this recipe. It has like an apricot chicken, or you can use like an apricot jelly or like an orange jelly. Mix it with the apple bourbon sauce, coat it on chicken, throw the chicken in. We did thighs last night. Oh my gosh, this is so good. And you can throw a little whiskey in that recipe if you want to, too. Anyway, the apple bourbon sauce, I'm telling you, it is tops. I love the Texas spicy, too. And I still have yet to try the Alabama one. Want to do that. But they have so many great flavors from basically any region where you've had barbecue, which I love, because sometimes you're just in the mood for the mustard or the vinegar or whatever.
Right, change it up.
Total barbecue person. And I'll tell you what, they have absolutely revolutionized my barbecue existence.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you should try them, too. RedStateBarbecue.com is where you go. Promo code RAV10 for your 10% off, and you got to get them all. The whole collection, a whole bookshelf in your refrigerator.
There you go.
Sauce.
And speaking of saucy, Terrance Bates is always saucy. Take it away.
Well, ladies, turning now to a pressing matter that seems to be facing all Americans, despite whether it's an election year or not, and that would be the deep state and the gangsters that run it. In his new book, Government Gangsters, Real America's Voice contributor Kash Patel, of course, a former top White House official, rips the veil off of the deep state to expose who they really are and what they are up to. He joins us live now to talk more about this. Kash, always a pleasure. You and I, of course, have talked about your book quite a bit. One of the things that strikes me, and I think it's an important point to make, you say that this whole idea of government gangsters isn't just Democrats. There are Republicans also who you say are complicit.
Terrance, thanks so much for having me on. And, you know, you might be shocked or you might not be shocked to hear that I probably call out more Republicans in my book, Government Gangsters, as government gangsters than Democrats. Because to me, we know ideologically we differ with Democrats. But ideologically, we're not supposed to differ on mainstream issues in the conservative realm. But the problem we had with government gangsters in the Trump administration were people like Rod Rosenstein, Chris Wray, Gina Haspel, Mark Esper, Chairman Mark Milley, and so many other people, Paul Nakasone at NSA, that people may have never heard about, who were Republican appointees that fought Donald Trump because they personally disliked him and wanted to be held in good regard by the rest of the fake news media. So they actually subverted democracy to work against a duly elected president. That's the crux of the book. But we talk about the solutions about removing them as well, and how we get these agencies and departments to return to working for the American people behind Donald Trump's leadership.
And Kash, we are going to get to the crux of this matter momentarily, but I am curious, and I have to say, having perused the book, one of the things that came to mind is this whole idea of government gangsters. Are you using that term literally, or is there also a figurative meaning there?
No, I have literally used this and labeled them. And in the back of the book, there's an index cited government gangsters listed alphabetically in the executive branch that either did serve, were serving, or are currently serving. I think America has a right to know, especially when we send a duly elected president to the Oval Office, who is working in concert with him and his agenda, and who is working to subvert democracy. And so I call them out by name. I know they're not going to like it. And that's probably why the Biden administration buried the manuscript for 10 months.
Naming them is one thing, taking them down is a second.
Yeah.
And that's where it's not just about you, it's about all of us.
No, you're absolutely right. Look, it's going to take, and I was with Real America's Voice in the Villages the other night with Miranda and Dr. Gina, and what an amazing event, and I couldn't thank them enough for being there. It is about our entire country. We need to fix Washington, D.C. by replacing not just the president in the Oval Office, but every single appointee in the government administration. And that takes all of the United States of America. It doesn't take me alone. It's not one network. It takes all of us, and we have to educate them with the facts.
Kash, apart from names in the book, the whole idea of government gangsters, who, again, you have named, it seems like this is an institutional thing. It's not just a person-by-person thing. So taking down the government gangsters also implies that you have to take down an institution, if you will.
You have to take down almost every single institution, Terrance. You're right. And I know that might sound crazy, and they'll probably label me as some conspiracy theorist. But the FBI, for example, the headquarters component needs to be shuttered. That leadership structure has weaponized justice and created a two-tier system of justice. Just look at them and DOJ, Wray and Garland, that are prosecuting people based on what they and who they worship. And they are prosecuting people based on who they voted for. And they're prosecuting people because they believe in conservative values. That's not the United States of America. So we have to use our American taxpayer dollars in Congress to get these agencies working for us again, and not for servicing their own egos like so many, like Chris Wray and Merrick Garland, have done. But most importantly, they've lit the Constitution on fire. Due process in this country is gone, and we have to restore it by shredding the agency leaderships at FBI, DOJ, and elsewhere.
Kash Patel, we'll have to leave the conversation there. Always good to see you, my friend. Keep doing what you're doing and exposing the government gangsters. That's the book right there, folks. Pick it up as soon as you can. All right, let's go over to David Brody. He's got another interesting interview right now. One of my favorites. I had the chance to talk to the gentleman you're getting ready to talk to last week, and I'm feeling for him right now, but I'll let you roll out the story.
Well, thanks, Terrance. You're talking, of course, about Coach Joe Kennedy. All he wanted to do was pray at the 50-yard line after a high school football game. Basically, the school district did not want him to do it. He took him to the Supreme Court. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, of course, ruled in Joe Kennedy's favor. He could pray after the game. He did just that. On Friday night, this past Friday night in Bremerton, Washington, he was back on the field for the first game. I was there. It was an emotional moment, an amazing time, historic moment in American religious freedom history. And now yesterday, we find out that Joe Kennedy has resigned his position as assistant coach there at Bremerton High School. Coach Joe Kennedy with us now from Pensacola, Florida. Coach Kennedy, great to see you. Take us through this decision. This was not easy, but at the same time, in a way, it might have been sadly easier than it looked from the outside.
Yes, after an 8-year fight, you get tired. That's the longest marathon I think I ever want to ever run in my life. And after the game, my wife and I, as you know, we sat down, we talked about it, we prayed about it. We were leaving it up in God's hands of what is next for us. And with everything going on, and it was no picnic for the school district to have me back. It wasn't great for me to be there. My wife's dad, as you know, it hasn't been doing well, and we got some bad test results. So we prayed upon it, and we made a decision over the weekend that might as well retire. We did what we needed to do. We ran that race. We finished the fight. We remained faithful throughout.
Yeah, you did finish the race. You won the fight, and not just a fight for yourself, because it was never about you. It was about really all Americans. And when I say all Americans, conservative, liberal, animal, vegetable, mineral, doesn't matter. I mean, it was all about religious freedom at the end of the day. And listen, I just want to be clear here on national television. You're taking the high road. I mean, there were some things, I'll say it, you don't have to say it, but there were some things the school district did that were not to your liking. But you're not out to trash the school district, though you did tell me in the interview we did in Bremerton on Friday that you did feel like an outsider, and it was tough to come back. I'm curious if you'll address that part of the equation here.
Well, you absolutely nailed that. And like you said, you and I had, in-depth conversation over that off the camera and off mic, which, I love the school. I love our football program. I love the people of Bremerton. And I can't think of a better way to go than just holding my head high and resigning so everybody kind of wins at this. I knew there was no right time to ever get out of a fight. But I believe that God has really directed us to do this. And I'm not inside the institution anymore, so now I can really stand up and not have to be governed by an entity like a school district, and be able to just work God's magic and be able to, stand up for all Americans and keep fighting for religious liberty for all Americans.
Yeah, for sure. Because what I did see on the sidelines that night, and I talked to you about it, you and Denise, after the game, that, you were there on the sidelines alone for long stretches. Not all the time, but there were long stretches where you were alone. And I think that was a visual signal that things were just not right. And you definitely confirmed that. So what's next for Coach Joe Kennedy? You have a lot going on personally, obviously. I know some stuff is going on personally with your wife's father or your father-in-law. So you need to take care of that. What about potential ministry opportunities? What about where God might have you next, Coach?
Yeah, that's where I want all Americans to pray for myself and my family, and that we will be directed in which way we need to go next. We know we're called to do something. We're here to serve the Lord and serve our country, and we both are just so passionate about both of those that we will serve in any capacity that God calls us to. We're just hoping that he answers and opens that door here really quickly. But I think he's given us a rest. And last night was the first night that we've been able to fall asleep and not have the weight of the world upon our shoulders. And God's just given us a moment of rest so we could, be ready for the next round, whatever that may be.
As we wrap up here, tell me a little bit about what your message is to all Americans, whether they be high school coaches praying on a football field. I mean, you've paved the way for what they can now do on a football field or athletic course anywhere in America. What's your message to people in terms of fighting the good fight? Because there'll be other fights ahead. Coach Joe Kennedy, I think there he goes. He's frozen in time. But if you think about it, it kind of is appropriate because it was a moment, thank you very much, frozen in time. That's right. I said the transition there, related to what he did in Bremerton, Washington. It'll never be forgotten. There's no doubt about that, because he was someone that fought the good fight. He talked about finishing the race, and that's what this is all about. So it's important to understand that while there was victory, it's also important to remember that victory does come with a cost, and it did cost Joe Kennedy something in the end. All right, a lot more on the program. When we come back, it's time to sip some tea. I know Gina, Miranda, and Terrance love tea. I love tea too, so don't dismiss me. But how about the guy that received $50,000 after dealing with the cops on the side of the road? More in a moment.
Let's spill some tea.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. This segment, of course, sponsored by our good friends at Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTCO.com is a website to check out, and use that promo code RAV, and you're going to save yourself 10%.
That's right. Artillery Tea, all natural, whole leaf. The bags are chemical free, and each tea bag can be used 2 times.
And Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned, so great company. You want to support them because you know what? For every purchase, you also help them to help veterans and first responder charities.
ArtilleryTCO.com, ArtilleryTCO.com, promo code RAV10, or no, just RAV rather, for 10% off. Promo code simply RAV.
There you go.
First up in our cup, Delaware State Police have agreed to pay $50,000 to resolve a federal lawsuit filed by a man who they blocked from warning motorists of a speed trap. In the encounter, the man stood roadside holding a cardboard sign that read radar ahead, and when the cops forced him to leave, he made an obscene hand gesture and drove away. What ensued was an aggressive car chase and a threat from the cops to take the incident to court, which the man did, and he claimed his constitutional rights were then violated, and the court agreed, and they awarded him $50,000. David, when was the last time you were in a high-speed police car chase? Inquiring minds want to know.
The answer would be never, hopefully.
The answer is correct. Never. I was never in a high-speed chase. I'm sorry, because remember, I just go around with, wait for it, MAC makeup. But no, look, I mean, I wasn't... I've never done this. Can I just say real quick, is it just me, or doesn't the GPS always work? Where did Terrance go?
I am not participating in this. There's too much talk about men in makeup. I'm not doing it.
The police are after him. I'm sorry.
I leave.
Oh, that's great. And there he is, ladies and gentlemen. Terrance Bates, live from Denver. There he is.
You lost him at
looks
makeup.
Like oh my gosh. No, you just stay. No, I understand, Terrance. Stay hidden. Look, but if you decide to make an entry back into the show, let me just simply say that. Do we not have radars, like with the GPS, like the whole GPS thing in the car? Like, doesn't say radar alert, speed alert? All this guy was doing was like being a human GPS on the side of the road. So good for him.
You know,
good for him.
Free speech, right? That's my feeling on it. Free speech. You know, I'm glad the guy got $50,000. I mean, I hate that it probably came out of taxpayer coffers, but you know what? You should be able to stand on the side of the road and hold a sign. And if all the creepy people that stand at all the stop signs here in West Palm Beach can stand there and make me feel like they might possibly break my window and strangle me to death at my stop sign. And then I think this guy can stand there and warn travelers that the cops are. Yeah.
Okay, so
well, that's a scary place to live. Woo! I'm glad I live in Boynton.
So note to self: when I do come down here to visit, don't go visit Dr. Gina. That's the first note. Second note is David Brody and this whole makeup thing. We're gonna have to have a conversation. Third note about the actual substance of this story. Here's the thing. So now, okay, I thought you were leaving now.
No,
So
I'm
here's
back.
the thing. If this gentleman wasn't impeding traffic, which it sounds like he was not, he had an absolute right to be where he was and a right to free speech to warn people about a speed trap up ahead. The fact that police would try to somehow divert that right is shameful in and of itself and illegal. I would think. I'm no lawyer, but it seems like that would be illegal. And so I'm glad the gentleman is now getting his due in terms of this $50,000 payment.
All right, guys, we're going to have to put the brakes on that.
Nicely played.
Oh.
Did you like that?
Nicely played.
We used to just flash our lights to warn people of that. Does anybody else remember that?
Yeah,
exactly. Yes. You put the high beams on. You put the high beams on.
Yeah, that's what you do. You didn't get in trouble for that.
No.
All right, up next, you don't want to leave your house today without a smile. Our Sunny Side Up segment is next, and hopefully we'll do just that. Bring you a smile to your face.
Tired of the same old mass-produced, globalist-supporting tea companies? Artillery Tea Company is the Patriot source of natural premium tea. Visit ArtilleryTCO.com and use promo code RAV for 10% off.
had some great comments from all of you in our chat, but my favorite was Cindy60. She said, good thing Paul Revere wasn't charged for warning that the British were coming if you can't even hold a sign and say, hey, there's a speed trap up ahead, right? Yeah. I agree with her.
Yeah, that was great. Great comment. All right, time for some sunny side up. So viral musician Oliver Anthony explained how faith, you guys are going to love this, how faith changed his life after the release of his hit song, Rich Men, North of Richmond, in a recent interview. He said he went to the ER with symptoms of a panic attack at the lowest point of his battle with depression, anxiety, and substance abuse. Wow. And that once he gave his life to God, he said just everything changed. And I think many of us can relate to that. 1 month later, he released his now famous track, again, Richmond, North of Richmond.
He also quoted Proverbs 4:20 in his interview, where he said it changed his life. Proverbs 4:20 reads like this. It says, my son, pay attention to what I say. Turn your ear toward my words. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them and health to one's whole body. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Keep your mouth free from perversity. Keep corrupt talk.
How often are each of us in a situation where you say, God, if you just do this for me, I will stop this, or I will do this, I will do that. And then the moment we get what we want, we go back to what we normally do. The fact that he actually did what he said and followed through, I love that part of it.
Yeah, and that goes to free will. And that's what God talks about in the Bible, that, you know, he's the God of heaven. He's the God of eternity. But he also allows each and every one of us to have exercise free will. And so it's just marvelous to see that. Look, at the end of the day, we're all sinners saved by grace. And I'll be right at the top of that list. That's all I have to say.
I'm on your shoulder, brother.
Real quickly, though, we have some great guests coming up on American Sunrise tomorrow. Harrison Floyd, the only African